Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO and president of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. And with that, I have an incredible guest today, Neil Daly. He's changing the world of AI, dermatology, healthcare innovation, and entrepreneurship. And we're talking to him from Palo Alto, California. Hi, Neil. How are you today?
Well, thanks, Gary. Firstly, just want to say thanks for having me on. I'm impressed to talk to someone with such a pedigree.
Well, I don't know about that. I feel like a dog now. Hey, listen, I'm a country boy. I grew up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, actually Nesbitt. We're on the side of a mountain, so a little tiny village, but it's great to be here. And it's great to, I've been in tech in Silicon Valley almost 40 years, so seen a lot of stuff. Anyhow, Neil, briefly introduce yourself in skin analytics. What inspired you to enter the dermatology AI space, and why is it important for you?
Yeah, thanks. So Skin Analytics, we're an AI as a medical device company. We've built an AI medical device that's able to diagnose skin cancer from an image of a skin lesion or a mole. We launched the service first in April 2020. So we've been live for 5 years. And we now see about 15% of the UK's National Health Service urgent skin cancer cases where we triage out about 30% of patients without them having to see a dermatologist. So the technology works autonomously, and that, I think, is one of the world's first autonomous deployments of an AI technology in the healthcare space. So we're delighted to have done that. But I started with dermatology simply because there's just a huge problem. Like most areas of healthcare, there's just not enough of the specialists that have the skills to make the diagnostic decisions. And so what we end up doing is creating these wait lists and these long times to access care. In the UK, about 10% of the patients who are trying to see a dermatologist are waiting for more than a year. In the US, the waiting times are just going through the roof. So we work with people like Stanford Medical Center, and they're telling us that their wait times are about 9 months now to see a dermatologist. So there's just a huge supply-demand mismatch, and that's obviously where artificial intelligence has a huge potential to change.
We have quite a few companies. We have 180 companies in GSD. In fact, Calviri, which is a cancer vaccine, is one of the companies in GSD, Live to 150. Cerebru, which is a medical imaging AI company out of Denmark. The concern I have is that I call it medical infobesity. It's not that we don't have the data points. We don't know how to analyze them. And these poor doctors are overwhelmed, right? There's too much that they have in front of them, and it's not fair. Then they've got the restrictions of some of the insurance companies that are putting pressure on them. And, I have a couple of concierge doctors myself. I feel privileged to be able to do it, but it's not fair to other people, right? They don't get a chance. You say 6 months, 7, you could be dead.
I think that's such a good point. And when people hear about our business, quite often they think that we are trying to do something to the doctors rather than with the doctors. And at the end of the day, when it comes to cancer, the rule on cancer, and this is true across all cancers, not just skin cancer, is that you have to look at a lot of healthy people to find the people who have the cancer. And the healthcare system just can't take that. I mean, where we have data from the UK, we have such good data sets there because it's nationalized. We know that 94% of the patients who are on these urgent pathways to see a dermatologist, so they get prioritized ahead of anyone else. 94% of them don't have a serious cancer, so they just don't need to be prioritized ahead of other people. And so these dermatologists in the UK, and this is true in the US and it's true in other specialties, are spending a lot of time with healthy patients to be able to find the ones they need to spend their time helping to fix. And that's unfair. They have this huge workload that is only getting bigger.
And the problem is they're going down through, there's so many people that they got to see that don't have a problem. If we could just concentrate the resources on the people that have the problems to be able to help them get better. My wife has cancer right now, right? She's got stage 2A triple negative breast cancer. And so I went through it myself through the system, and it was incredible to see the inefficiencies of the system. The system sucks, honestly.
It does.
And And I had a guy from MD Anderson that's an oncologist, and if I wouldn't have had some guidance from him, you need an advocate, you don't get it done. And so here's another thing I want to talk about. It's not just analyzing it, it's having tools that can go down through and get you to the right doctor, right? To make sure that you have somebody that understands this particular type of cancer.
That's right. We just need to bring, I guess, if you like to call it, multipliers to clinicians so that they can just see more patients and spend more time with the right ones rather than the wrong ones. And, cancer, as you gave the example, it's a particularly bad area for clinicians because they have to see so many healthy patients to find those that have the cancer. But it flows over to loads of different areas in healthcare. And what we need to do, I believe, is to embrace the technologies that we have now, which can actually help us redesign the healthcare system. And people say that flippantly and have been saying that for a long time now. But actually, we have something that is so intrinsically powerful that we can start to do that. We can go from this model of scarcity where you have, however many specialists in an area, and you have to build walls to get to them, whether it's primary care, whether it's, whatever the wall is to get to them. We've had to build those because we just don't have enough specialists.
Agreed. But that's crazy, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
here's another thing, Neil. I don't know what you think about this, but this kind of bothers me a little bit. Like, I met with somebody that's a former insurance executive. And one of the things that he said to me is that the system, wouldn't it be better if the life insurance companies were the ones that administered health insurance? Because then they would be focused on living longer instead of the situation that we just stay alive instead of getting cured, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but it kind of feels like we're in this subscription model, like in terms of healthcare, instead of solving the problem and getting it done because there's not the amount of money into it. Shouldn't it be a situation where we solve it just like you have? If you created an end-to-end ecosystem using the technology you have, take it into a company like Calviri, which is one of our our cancer vaccine companies. It goes right over there. All of a sudden, you catch it early, you take rid of it, and it's done instead of it metastasizing, and it's everywhere through your lymph. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. It's such an interesting idea to get the life insurance companies to be thinking about this. And just to flip it around to remember that the clinicians involved in care have such a difficult job. To entertain ideas of using the life insurance company isn't a slight on clinicians. I think it's really difficult when you've got the patient in front of you. Your job is to get the best outcome for that patient. Now, that is a different story from trying to get the best outcome for the health system, where you might want to be able to do more predictive health. And I know so many doctors who would love to be able to spend more time with patients, help coach them how to live more healthy lives and to avoid downstream illnesses, but they can't spend that time. I mean, in the UK, your primary care doctor gets 7 minutes with you.
You come in and have 7 minutes. From a doctor here that was involved, my concierge doctor that was involved, one of my concierge doctor that was involved in the healthcare system said they were allowed 15 minutes and they took it down to 7. Seriously. And this is why he got out of it and he got into the concierge side. He'll spend an hour and a half with me. We have discussions. He in depth, but that's the way it should be. It's insane. So anyhow, I love what you're doing. Tell me a little bit about, you created the first autonomous AI medical device in dermatology, right? By the way, I've heard of it before. So, spent a lot of time out of Stanford myself. I've heard of it. I don't know if exactly it was yours. It sounds like it. But tell me exactly how the AI works and what sets it apart from other technology, other existing protocols that are out there today.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, it would have been ours. We did a part of our clinical study in the US. We did out of Stanford. So you probably did come across our technology. And look, I think the first thing to say is that we're still working towards FDA clearance and hopefully aren't too far from that now. We started with clearance in Europe, and we have a class 3 clearance, which allows us to do that autonomous diagnostics. And, that was a big, long path for us. I've been running this company for more than a decade, and we had to build out the clinical evidence first to show that the technology could work. And then once we had the clinical evidence built out, we then had to go and put it into sites to show that when you have a technology in AI and it works in the lab and it works in a clinical study, quite often it starts to fail when you put it into the messy world of clinical practice. And we spent a lot of our time making sure that didn't happen. And so we had to really prove that when we moved from that lab environment or that clinical study environment into the real world of patients, that we were able to maintain that performance. And we've been able to show that we have over a 97% pickup rate of cancers, which is very favorable compared to.
I love it. I heard about you guys. Why don't we take all these technologies that we have, Neil, and blend them together and create an ecosystem like nobody's ever done before? These are islands of opportunity. They need to be brought together to help us live. We talk about living to 150. Well, I had 100 million stem cells put in my body, mesenchymal stem cells. Twice I had 50 million stem cells put in. Chronologically, I'm at 46 years old. I dropped down, 20 some years in terms of chronological. I've done it. I had stage 3 kidney disease. It's gone.
That's incredible.
I feel better. I'm healthier. I'm stronger. Why don't other people have the same advantage to use these technologies to help us live longer? We have 8.1 billion people on the planet Earth today, going to 13 by the end of the century. Why don't we help each other? These are, what you're saying, this is like the fountain of youth. You're part of the fountain of youth. And by people doing this, they get, when people die and they've got cancer, I've had those kind of situations in my own personal life. And if we can go down through and cure these and get rid of this misery, how much better is humanity going to be?
It's a great question. And look, I think, from my perspective, one of the things that we have to get a little bit better about is quantifying and talking about risk in the right way. So I know that people are very uncomfortable with the idea of artificial intelligence making decisions, let alone autonomous decisions about cancer. But we've seen over 200,000 patients now across the different pathways we have. We found more than 15,500 cancers. There is no doubt left about the ability for us to find cancer. We've been able to show that we can provide in-year savings to the hospitals that work with us. There is not a lot of unknowns in our technology anymore, but yet the idea that there's a risk in using our technology needs to be offset against the risk of doing nothing. When I mentioned to you that we had 10% of patients in the UK waiting more than a year to get access to a dermatologist, some of those have cancer. And those patients that have cancer are going to get worse outcomes because they're not found. And I think that's to your point. We have these technologies that can make a material difference in lives. We need to get better at finding out how do the risks compare of doing nothing versus adopting a technology that people are a little bit uncomfortable with.
I honestly, Neil, I think there's another thing here. And I have a lot of med tech companies inside of GSD, right? I think it's not that. I think it's a marketing. I think it's a storytelling, because it's talking about risk. Let's talk about opportunities. Let's talk about living longer, and let's turn it into a positive thing. Mother Teresa said that it's not stopping war, it's about pro-peace, right? Let's talk about the pro-peace. By the way, I spoke at the UN about technology as a tool for peace personally. So I've gone down through this many, many times, and I talked about longevity and stem cells and why don't we do these things. You're one of the holy grail of it, and getting the storytelling is very important to get it out. The problem is people don't. You're like a Ferrari in the garage, and people don't know about it. It's almost like it's not real, right? And the thing is, you got to get it out. The other thing is, the part of it is the family offices. The family offices, 99% of wealth is 1% of the population. The family offices are very concerned about it and looking at these kind of things. So getting it out, changing the dynamic is important. And we need to create this ecosystem. This ecosystem of frontier technologies are going to help us live longer. And by the way, people are going to buy off. It's going to happen. It's happening now. I see it with my companies. Cerebro is one of my companies in Denmark. That company can take a medical image and make it, literally hundreds of times better, so that you can pick up things working with MRIs. And that company is taking off. But again, it's getting the Ferrari out of the garage, not just so that your neighbors can see it, but winning the Formula One.
It is a really interesting. There's a couple of things that I want to comment to there. One is, you can hear I'm originally from Australia. I lived in the UK for a long time, just moved out to the US a while ago. And it's a learning process. In the UK, you don't promote yourself or the company. You've got to be very careful about how you get the message out. People are resistive to this idea of sort of, the marketing around trying to help people understand what this can do. But you're right. Without doing that, you just don't get known, and people don't know that what's possible and what's not possible. So we've got a bit of work to do to do that. But aside from that, your second point I thought was really interesting as well. We started out by trying to replicate what humans can do, and by trying to make the AI work in the way humans can. And what's really interesting is now we're moving beyond that. So we're starting to identify things with the AI that the humans didn't yet know about. And I think that's when it starts to get really cool. When you're mentioning some of these other companies, I heard about today a company that was looking at breast cancer screening, and they're saying that they can identify breast cancer 5 years before it typically would get found. And I don't know what state their evidence generation is or all those sorts of things, but I believe that this is possible. I believe that the signals are there for us to interpret in a way that we've never had so much data digitized. We've never had such powerful AI systems to be able to do the data analysis, that now we are going to start to discover things that we never knew before. And the AI is going to be able to become, if you like, super.
One of the companies that's inside of Voxy, inside of GSD, so that company's from Boston Scientific, and that company, we can detect cancer from your breath. So that company's got over 40 granted patents. It's inside of GSD today. And we look at these frontier sciences all bundled, like I said, all bundled together with yourself. Imagine how much cancer we can pick up. One of the companies can pick it up. So Calviri not only detects, but can cure with the vaccine, but they detect it before stage 1, right? Before it's a stage 1 cancer. And imagine how important that is. So you get a triple negative breast cancer. Think of how much money that's going to save the system. Whether they want it saved or not, it's a whole different deal. But how much money?
It's incredible, isn't it? I heard or I read a long time ago about dogs that could smell skin cancer. And I was like, this can't be true. This can't be true. But it is true. There is like some sort of signal that can be picked up by animals with these very effective sensors that they have in their noses. And we can replicate that. It turns out that, we're doing such a great job with images that we don't need to add these different modalities yet. But it tells you how many signals are there. If you think about humans, our senses are very, very good. Our eyes, our hearing, our smell, but they're also only a tiny fraction of the visible spectrum, of the spectrum can we see and interpret with our eyes. And if you open out all these different parts of the spectrum, you're going to find out so much more that can be indicative of cancer, disease, all sorts of things.
And so we're building multi-agent large language models. So I have 14 of them working as a team in a think tank. So that thing I've been working on for 3 years. So I own an R&D group on one side of it. We built the stuff. On the other side of it, the multimodal LLMs, where you're going down through and using things like, senses, right? So smell. So it's very interesting that you said that, every time I do my show, I pick up something else, but to be able to sense, to smell the cancer like a dog, like a bloodhound, to be able to pick it up. That is going to change things. Then to go down through and have the vaccine to be able to cure it, to be able to go down through with the radiation if you need to do it, to get it before you have to destroy so many cells is so important. I just love it. So I want to ask you a question. What's the most important you've learned about entrepreneurship from your journey at Skin Analytics?
Resilience.
In particular in dealing with large institutional partners like the NHS.
Yeah, it's resilience. It's the one thing I think every entrepreneur has. It's the only thing. I haven't been able to see any signal in age, gender, race. None of those have any signal that I've ever seen. But everyone has a healthy dose of resilience. It's kind of learning to listen to the experts to know what you should take from them, but ignoring the experts to know what you should ignore from them. And it's a very difficult skill. And I think when you're someone like us working with what is one of the world's largest employers, the NHS employs so many people in the UK, the National Health Service, they just don't even realize how what is the trivial delay to them could be the end of a company like ours because of the mismatch in size and speed of the way we operate. And so, I think it takes a lot of resilience to be able to work through those challenges, to make sure you're educating people at every step of the way about, one, the potential of what you're doing, but also to help them not kill you out of kindness. They want to work with you, but they can't move fast enough. And by the time they've strung you along for a year trying to get to something, you're in a bad place, and they're just getting started, if you see what I mean. So I think that has been probably the biggest learning, is when you're working with these big companies, you have to educate them on why they need to move faster, because they don't want you to fail, they want you to succeed, but they don't often know about the challenges that you face in a small company.
But they're not entrepreneurs. And sometimes the political dynamics in those groups are really bad because they push it. they hold you back. I know it's a problem when you have meetings to talk about meetings. Then you start to have challenges. Given your experience, what would you recommend to other health tech entrepreneurs trying to navigate these complex regulatory requirements? Because it's a pain, right? And here's the other thing, Neil, if you can save somebody's life, wouldn't you want to try? I mean, if you go out to somebody that's dying of cancer and you've got something that's going to save them, wouldn't you want to try that?
Yeah. I'll share a little anecdote on that one and come back and answer your question about the regulatory pathway. We are very, very cautious about using our technology in demo environments, because we have a test that's saying whether or not you do or don't have cancer. And while the positive predictive value, because you're always going to have over referrals in cancer, you're going to have to biopsy a lot of things to find the cancer. So when we say, hey, there's something suspicious here, that doesn't mean you definitely have cancer. But at the same time, when we're demoing in a meeting, for example, and it comes up with a positive outcome, that can be an awful experience for someone. So we're very, very careful with it. That said, we've had meetings where we found cancers. We found a melanoma for one in one business meeting that we had, and we found out a couple of weeks later that they had it biopsied and they didn't know it was a cancer, a melanoma, an aggressive cancer, and we were able to save them from it. So,
I love it, Neil. Those stories, you got to tell those stories though. You know what I mean? One of the things that you learn. So on one side, we're a family office. On another side, I have one of the AI-enabled PR agency. In fact, I think I may have the only one on the planet Earth, actually. And then on the other side of it, the back end of it, we have our software development. All the things come together as one, because you got to make it look real interesting and sexy and exciting. At the same time, you got to have the right stuff on the back end of it to make it real. What you're doing, though, you got to get that message out. I love the message you just said about coming into a meeting. That story is very, very, very powerful, because everybody out there is concerned about, especially if they're in places like Florida or California, concerned about the sun, or Arizona, and they're concerned about melanomas. And one of my friends died from it because he just didn't know that he had it. It was aggressive.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I think that every meeting I have from now on, someone's going to ask me if I can check a skin lesion for them. It's something that happens in a lot of meetings. But going back to your first comment about the regulatory pathways, look, we made a decision early on. I've been around in this game for quite a while. I told you I've been running this company for over a decade now. So when we first were working on this technology, it was at a time where everyone said, hey, look, just go around the regulations. No one's ready for software as a medical device. No one's ready for AI. No one knows what to do with it. Get around and try and get this out before you get it regulated. And, that is a very startup way of thinking about things. And we were very cautious, and we decided that wasn't how we were going to operate, that we were going to lean into the regulations. And we did it for a simple reason. I strongly believe that for artificial intelligence that's going to work within healthcare, it has to be integrated into care pathways so that it is part of the solution that includes doctors, includes treatment, and it makes sure that you get to the right outcome for patients. And to do that, you have to go through the regulations. So we leaned into it very heavily. And I would recommend anyone who wants to work in health tech, it's probably more obvious now than it was when we did it, but that is something that you have to do, because it is just essential. It's a muscle you have to build. There is so much oversight, so many auditors that come in and evaluate your company. You can't hope to be good at it without spending the years perfecting it. And so I really recommend leaning into that heavily early on so that you can actually play a meaningful role in the healthcare system.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so we're coming up to the top of the show. By the way, after we're done, if you want to stay on a few minutes and we can talk, that would be great. What's next for Skin Analytics, and how can our listeners follow or support your journey?
Yeah, look, we are not as good at marketing as we should be, as you've pointed out today. So hopefully we can try and raise our profile a little bit, and people can help get the message out that these technologies are here to help, and we'd love to hear that sort of support build. We are in the process of expanding out from the UK into Europe. We'll have a couple of new country deployments that are going live in the next couple of months. And then we're on the path to getting into the US. It'll be 2026 by the time we get on the ground here, but that's going to be super exciting. So yeah, look out for us expanding both geographically. We're also expanding out our products. There is so much potential to sort of transform how dermatology care is delivered, especially around cancer.
No, I love it. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. It's appreciated. And I thank all my listeners out there for joining one more time. GSD presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And we'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, and I'll be back to you, Neil, in just a minute.